Matthew here with Hill House Creative, and today I'm going to answer a question we get all the time. Our clients come to us and they want to know, do I just need to make some minor updates to my website, or do I need to start from scratch? Okay, so the simple answer here is if your website is more than 10 years old, you probably need to start from scratch. Let me go over the facts. Your software is going to be out of date. Your content's out of date. You're probably not using a content management system like WordPress or Squarespace or Wix. You probably don't have an SSL on your website. It's just website's not secure. And Google's going to look at all of that, and they're just going to be like, no, we're going to rank you down because you're not a modern website. You're not delivering quality, up-to-date content. So they're going to rank you down. Okay, so 10 years older, it's time for an update, a big update. If it's between 6 and 10 years, you probably could get away with making some big changes, but not starting over completely. And you might want to evaluate your website and look at some of the things you have on there to see what you're missing, see what you have. If it's newer than, say, 5, 6 years, more than likely you're probably in a safe place, and all you need to do is some content and graphical changes. You may need to refresh things depending on how much you use your website, but I've generally comfortable with just doing some graphic things at that point and maybe some content, just minor content updates. So with that, I'm going to hop on the desktop and I'm going to show you some of the things we do to evaluate a website and maybe give you a more deep dive into that.
Okay, so here we are on the desktop. Now the first question I want to ask is this website using a content management system? Now, if you have a business and you have a website and you're not sure if you have a content management system, then you don't have access to it. So you need to look at whoever built your website and ask them, or check with your site administrator and ask them. You want to have access to your website. It's your website, and you should have access to being able to update and make changes. So that's the first thing to kind of look at. If you have a content management system, it makes updating much easier. I always check and see, are they using WordPress or are they using something else? Now the second thing that I'm going to look at is this website using the full width of the screen. So as we can see here on the Hill House Creative website, it goes from edge to edge of the browser in many places, here to here and here to here. It's using the full width of the screen. If I adjust the size of the browser screen, it's fluid and it kind of changes. If you look at this web page, this is a web page that was put together based on older code, something that you would have seen maybe anywhere from 10 to 20 years ago. You still actually can see websites like this today that haven't been updated, but you can tell it doesn't use the full width of the screen. It's very boxed in. That's because back in the day, websites were built so that they fit within a laptop screen. So you would set 720 pixels or maybe like 800 pixels wide, and you wouldn't want anything outside of that. These days, that's just not a thing anymore because we have more flexible modern designs. But as you can see here, if I try to squeeze this, it stays the same. It doesn't adjust. It's very rigid. Okay. We're looking for that flexibility like we have here. So when you see a website and it moves and changes with the browser, that's a more modern design. Almost anything from the last 5 years or so is going to be pretty modern. Since we were talking about flexibility, something else to bear in mind is if it is flexible, and you're more than likely going to have something that's mobile friendly. But I would take a look at your website on your phone and making sure you're not having to pinch to make things bigger. If there are places that you feel like you need to do that, write those down and look at maybe updating that on your website, because there are ways, especially with modern website builders and WordPress, that you can adjust the type and all that stuff for mobile only, just to make sure your website's working properly on mobile. But again, if your website's fairly new, you probably are out of the box set up to be mostly mobile friendly. There are some tweaks you could probably make, or your web designer can make. For those older sites, if you notice that it's not mobile friendly, it's time for looking at getting a new website. Now, the next thing I want to look at is organization, and particularly with the navigation menu up here. If I'm looking at a website and the navigation is kind of out of control and has lots of drop downs and a ton of stuff up here. Typically, I feel like that's the time when a website really needs to stop and look at reorganizing their site. Now, in many cases, it doesn't need a new redesign. It just needs to have some things moved around and your navigation just to be updated. Lots of links and tons of drop downs can be very confusing and usually are a sign of a website that's either grown too fast or was built back when navigation was less simple. These days, we like to have our navigation very simple, and we like to have things very well organized. Now, the last thing I want to look at is probably the most important part, the content. Is the content up to date and on brand? That's the first thing. So look through your content and make sure everything is speaking in the voice your brand has established. Is it saying the things that are more about you today rather than about you, say, 5 years ago? Look at things like if you have a blog or some kind of news section, like we have our insight section on our website, and our content there is fairly evergreen, so that means it's not dated content and it stays valid for a long time. But if you have things like news or events in your website, sometimes those events, you can delete those after a while, especially if they're events that have already passed. If it's something that talks about what you've done for the community, you could probably leave that kind of thing up there. But if it's like running a contest or something, you can take that stuff off. You don't need to keep it on your website. Go through your content and curate that content and make sure everything is as up to date as it can be and is speaking to your brand. And that's all for this video. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you soon.